After the family moved into a brand new apartment building at 1520 Sedgwick, Kool Herc would return to the hotel to frequent the disco downstairs, the Plaza Tunnel. A friend of his from high school, named Shaft, spun records there, as well as a DJ named John Brown. In gay and black clubs at the time, DJs were pushing the emerging four-on-the-floor disco beat. But the Plaza Tunnel DJs had a rawer sound. John Brown was the first to play records like Give It Up or Turn It Loose, and Sex Machine by James Brown, It's Just Begun by the Jimmy Castor Bunch, Get Into Something by the Isley Brothers, Moment of Truth by Earth, Wind, and Fire, Melting Pot by Booker T and the MGs, Listen to Me by Baby Huey, Scorpio by Dennis Coffey and the Detroit Guitar Band, I Know You Got Soul by Bobby Bird, with an eclectic mix of soul, R&B, and rock records like Maggie by Redbone, I'm a Man by Chicago, Get Ready by Rare Earth. Get Ready was a favorite in the Bronx because it lasted over 21 minutes, which was long enough for the serious dancers to get into the beat. They loved to wait for the song's 2-minute drum solo to show their most spectacular moves. At the climax of a Plaza Tunnel night, when DJ John Brown put on Soul Power, Black Spades would overrun the floor, hollering Spade Power. The firecracker energy being generated at the Plaza Tunnel gave Kool Herc the standard to aim. By the early 1970s, Herc was venturing beyond his local neighborhood to other Bronx jukes such as the Puzzle, the Shaft, the Rat Hole, and Soulsville, later known as the Hevelo, often in the accompaniment of African-American style writers such as Phase 2, Super Cool 223, Uncle Rich, E.L. Marco 174, and Sweet Duke 161. When asked how he got his start in hip-hop, he specifically points to dancing in these underground venues with fellow artists. All them guys, we used to like music, Herc explains. We used to dance. We liked to dance. After we start bombing places, little trains and stuff like that, we go hang out in the Puzzle or somewhere downtown, Nemo's, Nell Gwynn's, places like that. Just as they took the alphabet beyond its confines through stylized signatures, these Bronxites moved their bodies in unrestricted ways on dance floors, as well. Like other partygoers, they socialized and did the latest dances, but, when the percussive crescendos of funk songs came on, they performed their own steps and movement. One of the most well-known clubs that Herc and his friends would frequent was the Plaza Tunnel, PT, located in the basement of the Grand Concourse Plaza Hotel in the West Bronx. For much of the borough's history, this hotel housed prominent politicians, businessmen, and New York Yankee baseball players. However, given the demographic changes in the region during the 1960s, the hotel found it increasingly difficult to fill its halls with affluent guests. As a result, it began catering to the African American and Latino residents who were populating the borough. Herc's recollection of the club was that it was an underground venue, both figuratively and literally, with attendees, who were overwhelmingly African American, going downstairs into a large, dimly lit room with just one strobe light and the red glow of exit signs illuminating its halls. Crowds of up to 400-500 teenagers would pack this basement club and dance to the music of DJ John Brown, a high school classmate of Herc's who would fuse funk records such as It's Just Begun, 1970, by the Jimmy Castor Bunch, Get Into Something, 1970, by the Isley Brothers, and Moment of Truth, 1971, by Earth, Wind, and Fire, with an eclectic mix of soul, R&B, and rock records like Get Ready, 1970, by Rare Earth, Maggie, 1970, by Redbone, and I'm a Man, 1971, by Chicago. Again, this diversity in music exemplified the zeitgeist of alternative expression and identity formation taking place within the borough. In venues such as the PT, a select few partygoers would match the percussive crescendos of funk-based songs with movement that equally went beyond the bounds of standardized performance. They would rapidly shuffle their feet, shimmy their shoulders, or gesture with their hands to the rhythm of the music being played. Others might slide in one direction before smoothly hitting multiple upright spins and coming to a stop, or they might lean back on one hand to touch the floor before springing back upright. Often, these movements were adapted and refashioned from previous African American forms, such as the moves of James Brown or eccentric dancers from the jazz era. The more one put a unique twist on a popular step or came up with their own novel sequences, the more crowds would gather and cheer on their performances. Young people in the Bronx interchangeably referred to such irreverent dancing as freestyling, going off, and, most importantly, breaking. Like the spirit of funk itself, such individualized dancing exuded independence, defiance, and exuberance, with practitioners being encouraged to cultivate their own corporeal subjectivity, rather than regurgitate. As a result, dancers invested so heavily in their movements that they passionately guarded them from would-be imitators. In my little neighborhood, you would get beat up for copying a guy's moves. That's how serious that dancing was, explained Kool Rock, a close friend of Herc's who accompanied him to the Plaza Tunnel and other local venues. La Rock's emphasis on originality is shared by virtually every other early breaker, suggesting that the will to adorn identified by Hurston was elevated to communal policy among Bronxites involved in the dance. Indeed, breakers risked social ostracization, and even physical violence, for failing to come up with their own moves during this period. As scholar Jim Vernon has pointed out, this emphasis on individuality was enforced collectively by both practitioners and audiences who demanded a certain level of knowledge and appreciation for aesthetic precedents within the dance. The rationale against biting, copying, was also closely tied to the realization that these dance moves were an embodied expression of a practitioner's sense of self. For somebody to mimic another's moves without permission was deemed to be an attack on. Of course, over time, certain movements gained widespread appeal and then were reproduced and adorned by other dancers. In this way, they became incorporated into the broader repertoire that breaking was becoming known for.